All right, we've got a major breaking news story that will likely be sweeping the nation over the next days to weeks because of how sickening it is. The Trump administration just admitted in a Monday night court filing that they accidentally deported a man with protected legal status, someone who had been here for over a decade. He moved here as a teenager, now as a father. They placed him on a plane and then sent him to a foreign prison where he is now in serious danger. But the worst part is, the Trump admin is arguing they can't do anything about it, which completely contradicts some of their previous arguments. The entire story is disgusting, and I want to give you some precise, deep analysis on what's going on. So make sure you drop a like. And the story broke from The Atlantic, but this is the first I saw of it. I saw a tweet that said, "New. In a court filing this evening, the Trump admin said that it had mistakenly deported a Maryland father to a notorious Salvadoran prison due to a, quote, administrative mistake." And here's the excerpt of the article that I'm about to read and go in depth. It says, "But in Monday's court filing, attorneys for the government admitted that the Salvadoran man, Kilmar Garcia, was deported accidentally. Quote, although ICE was aware of his protection from removal to El Salvador, Garcia was removed to El Salvador because of an administrative error," the government told the court. By administrative error, they mean they're rounding up every brown person in sight who vaguely has a cute rose tattoo on their wrist and then sending them to one of the most dangerous prisons in the world. And this is insane. The Trump admin is trying to justify it. We'll get there in a second. But if you just take all of this away, think about this. The federal government removed due process and knowingly deported a man with protected legal status, and now he's in serious, serious danger. That is a direct assault on the entire structure of American constitutional law. This says, Garcia was removed to El Salvador because of an administrative error. Trump's lawyers said the court has no ability to bring him back now that he's in Salvadoran custody. And now let's break down the legal meat of it. So this says, Trump's lawyers are arguing that because they've dumped this guy in Salvadoran prison, he can't file a habeas corpus petition because he's no longer in American custody. They're arguing that once you get sent to El Salvador, no one can order the government to bring you back. Let me repeat that last line. The Trump admin is arguing that once you get sent out of the country to El Salvador, they don't have the jurisdiction to bring you back or to order you back. And that is a scary argument because they're saying, yeah, we messed up, but it's done now. You're never going to see your kid again. There's nothing we can do about it. And here's the problem. This might be the most important piece of the video. So remember this. The courts are now in a terrible position. It's basically heads I win, tails you lose. Have you ever heard of that trap? When you say heads I win, tails you lose. So no matter what, you come out on top. So remember about 2 weeks ago when a few lawyers tried to challenge Trump's deportations before they happened because they said that Trump was doing this without due process. So Trump's lawyers then argued that the courts can't interfere because that would be premature. They said, no. You have to wait until the deportation happens, and then you can file a habeas petition. So the Trump admin's entire thesis was that after the deportation happens, you can challenge it in court. A habeas petition is basically the oldest legal protection in American law. It says the government can't detain you or deprive you of your liberty without cause. It's enshrined in the Constitution, in ink. But now, in this case, Trump's lawyers are arguing the exact opposite. So remember this, again, they said that you can't sue before the deportation because that's premature, but now they're saying that since the deportation happened, it's far too late for a habeas petition. Again, isn't that wild? When you try to stop it in advance, they say, no, you have to wait, that's premature. But after someone gets their life entirely ruined, the Trump admin says, you waited way too long. But now they're admitting they made a mistake and can't do anything about it. I saw some polling that while people across the country are vaguely satisfied with Trump's immigration policy thus far, I don't know how, they do think that Trump has taken it too far in a few cases, and this is something that we need to stay on. We need to keep our foot on their neck metaphorically because this is a massive infringement of rights, and it's wild. Again, heads they win, tails you lose. No matter what, the Trump admin is going to rig it so they come out on top. This says, the Trump admin acknowledged in a court filing on Monday that it had grabbed a Maryland father with protected legal status and mistakenly deported him to El Salvador, but said the U.S. courts lack jurisdiction to order his return from the mega prison where he's now locked up. It's kind of funny, just for some personal insight, my MAGA friend, he's super big on the Trump train. He just texted me and said, dude, the administration effed up. And this guy has got a really good legal brain. He's always talking about law, lawyer stuff. He was like, dude, this is called judicial estoppel. He was like, bro, look it up. It basically says you can't argue one petition in court and then in the next breath argue the exact opposite because it suits you politically. And that's exactly what the Trump admin is doing. Because in one case, the admin says that you should stay out of deportation logistics, wait until after they happen. But then after it happens, they say, hey, there's no remedy for this whatsoever, right? The case appears to be the first time the Trump admin has admitted to errors when it sent 3 plane loads of Salvadoran and Venezuelan deportees to El Salvador's grim terrorism confinement center on March 15th. Now, the thing is, we've read multiple stories, like the gay hairstylist who was deported. We've read all of these stories, but the Trump admin is now admitting that this did happen. They did make a mistake. In Monday's court filing, attorneys for the government admitted that the Salvadoran man was deported accidentally. Now, Garcia's immigration attorney said he's never seen a case in which the government knowingly deported someone who had already received protected legal status from an immigration judge. And of course, they're using different wording. Did they accidentally or knowingly deport him? What happened, from what I've read, is they knew that he had protected legal status, but they are now claiming that they accidentally rounded him up with everybody else and didn't realize. But I'm not sure I quite buy that framing or that story. I'm not even sure how that would be possible. That would be a stunning display of incompetence only a week after the Signal story. You want to know the funny part? Not really funny, but kind of grim part. This story was also broken by The Atlantic. Over the past week, The Atlantic has basically single-handedly taken down the Trump admin, which is absolutely insane. Wouldn't it be funny if it was also written by Jeffrey Goldberg? But I'm assuming he's been pretty busy lately. To continue, court filings show that Abrego Garcia came to the United States at age 16 in 2011 after fleeing gang threats in his native El Salvador. In 2019, he received a form of protected legal status known as, quote, withholding of removal from a U.S. immigration judge who found he would likely be targeted by gangs if deported back. And remember, the Trump admin attorneys told the court to dismiss the request on multiple grounds after Garcia's attorney was saying, dude, you've got to order him to come back. You've got to order El Salvador to send him back, rather. So Abrego Garcia, who is married to a U.S. citizen and has a 5-year-old disabled child who is also a U.S. citizen, has no criminal record in the United States, according to his attorney. The Trump admin does not claim he has a criminal record, but called him a, quote, danger to the community and an active member of MS-13. But of course, they've provided zero evidence. They gave the dude no due process, no chance to prove that he was innocent. It is absolutely disgusting. And again, if he was in danger 5 or 6 years ago from gangs, I'm sure he's in danger now. Likely in even bigger danger because his name is now all across the news. It's absolutely terrifying, and he has a 5-year-old disabled child. The immigration attorney said the charges are false. Anything that Trump admin has said about gang affiliations is false. Basically, Garcia was detained in a Home Depot parking lot about 6 years ago, and during questioning, one of the men tried to say that Garcia was a gang member, but there was no proof. The police didn't believe him, and police said he's not a gang member. The guy was just bullshitting about Garcia, but I guess that's enough to deport someone if they don't have any due process. Garcia was never charged with a crime. There was never any evidence, and despite the government trying to claim that he was a member of MS-13, they hired an attorney, they fought the government's attempt, and they won. They got a withholding of removal and protected status. So he was then protected. He was deemed not a danger to anyone. Now, it's not a path to permanent U.S. residency, but it means the government won't deport him back to his home country because he's more likely than not to face harm there. Garcia has no contact with any law enforcement agency since his release, according to his attorney. He works full-time as a union sheet metal apprentice. He complied with requirements to check in annually with the ICE and cares for his 5-year-old son, who has autism and a hearing defect and is unable to communicate verbally. I mean, imagine how sick to his stomach this dude likely is, because now he basically has no way back. Jon Favreau said, hey, Democrats, Maybe put down the polls for 5 minutes and do something about the fact that our government disappeared a Maryland father to a foreign torture dungeon. Very, very true. Tommy Vitor just said, the Trump admin now admits it wrongfully deported an innocent man to El Salvador, but claims they can't get him back. The White House could literally make one phone call to Bukele and have this guy back tomorrow. True, the Trump admin is BSing. MeidasTouch says, the Trump admin is committing crimes against humanity right before our eyes. They are disappearing people who are in this country legally and sending them to El Salvadoran prison camps to be tortured, and then saying there's no way for them to come back. Every official involved deserves nothing less than to be tried at The Hague, claims MeidasTouch. Drop a like and some blue hearts if you agree. They then link 2 tweets. One of Trump recently saying, thank you, President Bukele of El Salvador, for taking the criminals that were so stupidly allowed by Joe Biden, even though they just deported a legally protected dude. He had LPS, legal protected status, and he came in 2011. He came over a decade and a half ago, basically. The Atlantic then said, today, the Trump admin has acknowledged that it grabbed a Maryland father with protected status and mistakenly deported him to El Salvador, and now claims the courts are powerless to order his return. So the entire headline here is that the Constitution is now just a suggestion. The legal rights of the Constitution grants you, grants me, grants any person on United States soil. Now they're only enforceable if the government feels like it. And that's the definition of authoritarianism. What this admin just did is set a precedent, one where deportations are not just policy tools, but they're now a way to strip people of rights entirely. You can't just oops somebody to a massively violent prison and say there is no way to get them back. And you know, this isn't even about Garcia in particular. Of course, that is a horrifying story that I will continue to cover, but it's not even about Garcia in particular. It's about the government breaking the law and then hiding behind its own breach and saying, heads I win, tails you lose. I'll leave it at that. Make sure you drop a like, subscribe. I love you, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.